On today's Transport Evolved, there is a loss made by Nissan, a gain made by Tesla, and why Reno, Nevada could just end up being the home to the Tesla Gigafactory. These stories and more coming up next on Transport Evolved. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to episode number 209 of Transport Evolved, recorded on Friday, August 1st, 2014. My name is Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield, and my guest today is the wonderful Bob Tregilus, who used to be a host with me on This Week in Energy way back when, Bob?
2009?
Way back when? Long time ago. Yes, a long time ago. You know what? I wasn't going to talk about it, and now I'm going to, because there's lots of people criticising. We didn't have a show last week. We're really sorry about that. We had technical problems. We had some issues getting hold of Bob at the beginning of the show today. If you watch the live stream from the start, that's what's been going on. We're going to push on now. Things are not 100% right here in the studio. Things may go wrong. I apologise if they do, but you know what? I can't do everything. So let's go on to the show. Last week, we were going to talk about a really breaking news story which happened on Thursday. Bob, you helped us break it over at Transport Evolved. We did a follow-up story on the Friday morning. It was a hectic, crazy week, and it was to do with the site of a potential Tesla Gigafactory in Reno, Nevada. Do you want to take the story over from there, Bob?
Well, sure, since I live in Reno and am an EV enthusiast, and I also do a podcast for Plug-in America. I try and put out a podcast about once a month over there. And it was really cool when, of course, back, what was it, in February or so, earlier this year, when Tesla announced that they were going to be building this big battery plant, and they had a slate of 4 states where they were trying to figure out which state to build it in, and Nevada was one of them. And it seemed like we were the only ones who they actually had it narrowed down to northern Nevada, or the Reno area. Of course, Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona was just general, the states. They didn't really have nobody knew, where it might land in one of those states. So, yeah, it was really exciting because we were one of the fastest growing states through before the Great Recession. And of course, through the Great Recession, being the fastest growing state, you turn into one of the fastest shrinking states. And our economy was really bad, and unemployment was really bad. And so, yeah, this was very, very exciting news for us to hear here. And of course, in the article that I wrote and gave to you to post, I make the case of why Reno was really a no-brainer for Tesla to build here. And, of course, now, as of yesterday, we found out that, yes, they did break ground here in Reno. They finally admitted that this is a site they're considering, but we are definitely the first site that they broke ground, which would indicate to me means that we're, top on the list because they bothered to break ground here. But it doesn't really mean that the plant will land here for a variety of reasons.
Well, at the time, we thought it was going to be, we weren't sure if it was going to happen. We weren't sure if it was confirmed, if Tesla were just screwing around. Then came on the Thursday night, someone said, oh, hey, all the people have been laid off who were working on the site. And that was kind of scary, wasn't it, for a while?
Yeah, we'll back that up just a minute. I mean, that was like just really crazy. I would talk about a story with legs. Now, 2 weeks ago, Friday, of course, this is Friday, so 2 weeks ago, Friday, just kind of serendipitously, a friend of mine mentioned, her friend said that her neighbor was all kinds of excited because he just landed a job, long-term job, doing dirt work for this big battery factory they're building out between here and Fernley out at this Tahoe Reno Industrial Center. It's about 20 miles east of town going towards central Nevada. And I went, huh? Because everybody knows I'm into electric cars, but neither of these women really knew much about electric cars. So it's like I called up her friend and found out I was trying to get a hold of this guy so I could talk to him personally, but then Tesla came up. Nobody seemed to know the name Tesla for some reason. They just knew it was a battery factory. And I'd say, did Tesla ring any bells? And they go, yeah, that's the place. So I ran out there because I'd gone out there before. I've been wanting to write an article about why Reno would be, an ideal location for the Gigafactory. And I'd gone out there a couple of months before, nosing around to see if I could find an area that looked like it had been surveyed and staked off and laid out for something like a 10 million square foot building, And I didn't find anything, although I did find some places where I took some photographs that looked very much like the artist's rendering as far as the mountains and terrain were, and I was going to use those to try and make the case. And it was not at the Stead Airport, as that Tesla Mondo guy. He had an analysis on his website where north of town here is called the Reno Stead Airport, where they have the Reno National Air Races every year. And there is an area that kind of looks like that, but that wasn't really an ideal location because of residents, because Elon or Tesla would have to be fighting with the air race enthusiasts and stuff because it would displace the air races if they build a big factory out there and stuff. So anyway, east of town in this designated industrial area, you don't have to fight with a bunch of residents and air race fans and all that kind of stuff to build your factory. And I went out there and I was looking around. So I ran out there again after hearing this news that Sunday, the Sunday. I ran out there and looked at the site where I thought, well, this was kind of really matched the artist's rendering as far as the mountains were, because there was a blank site with a railroad spur that went right down the middle of it and stuff. And I thought, well, this could be this place, but it wasn't surveyed at the time 2 months ago. So I went out there and I went right to that spot, and there was like this little pad that had been graded and like 3 tractors parked there. And I'm going, no, this is not the Gigafactory. So I got up on some of the ridges and mountain ranges there because it's a really large area. And over one of the hills, one of the major kind of hills into another valley, I saw tons of this was on a Sunday, tons of tractors running around going all back and forth and clouds of dust coming up, and I go, whoa, that's interesting. So I found a better location and started taking some pictures and went to the back gate and the front gates, and of course they wouldn't let you in or anything. And so that was really tipped the red flags for me that was quite likely the site. And then I went to the convenience stores over, near this industrial center and started asking around and got the sense that, there were typical construction humor and stuff. It's like, well, if we told you what's going on out there, we'd have to kill you, that kind of stuff. Or if you drive out that road, there's nothing going on out that road. You drive out there, you'll fall into a black hole kind of stuff, And nobody actually said that it was the battery factory, but on subsequent visits, I made two or three more visits out there after that and asked more and got more aggressive in my questioning. And there was a lot of people admitted that it was Tesla and that it was the battery factory.
Now, one of the interesting things about this story is that obviously we built up this great big story. I mean, I'm sure did you contact Tesla? I know I did. I mean, I wrote to Tesla several times, reached out to all my contacts.
Waste of time.
And Tesla said nothing. Now, for those in the automotive world who do cover cars for a living, Tesla are notoriously good at going quiet when the story you want their input on turns out to be true. And I think I said this last week, but
But also, I forgot the reason I gave that whole introduction was, And then I wrote a story. Green Tech Media didn't want to print it because it had too much local color and stuff, because they wanted to do one with a lot of local color, and they just wanted something that was real down factual based. So I turned to you, Nikki, and figured you'd probably
anything
post
to help
the
you
story.
out.
And they did a story. They used a couple of my photos, and they did a story that, there was a suspected plant out there. But then the next day, it was like a Wednesday. Did you post a Wednesday or Thursday?
No, we posted it on Thursday. And you know what, Bob?
Thursday.
I know I jokingly said I know I jokingly said anything to help you out, Bob, but we were really stoked to have the story. So thank you very much for it.
No problem. I'm glad we got it out there. And,
yeah, absolutely.
I knew.
Anyway, please
I could rely on you when everybody was turning me away because it was too long and it had too much color and blah blah blah. So it was like, okay, well, Nikki will print it. She'll print anything.
Oh yeah, cheers.
Sorry.
Touche.
That's a reference to a 1980s commercial here in the United States about Mikey will eat it. Kids with the cereal. I don't know if you know that one. But anyway, so that you printed it Thursday, and then we're getting these comments on there from that Rhonda H, who said the plant has been shut down and everything, or the whole thing's been shut down. And it's like, oh God, it's just a troll. But then it turned out I ended up driving out there because she had emailed me, and yeah, it was true. And her husband, she claims, was working out there and from one of the subcontractor type thing, and that everybody got laid off and they shut it down. And then later I talked to other construction workers and come to find out that apparently this was about an hour after he said just Panasonic. I can't imagine just Panasonic would have been out there. It would probably have been both Panasonic and Tesla, or at least there would have been a couple of representatives from Tesla with them, I would guess. We're out there in buses, and he was actually a road grader, and he kind of his job was to grade the road that they drove the bus around the pad, and then they had these like scissor lift type man lift things with the big cages on them that lift people way up in the air.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They held up like faux corners of the building,
wow.
So that they would give perspective of what the building might look like on the pad there for the VIPs.
Wow.
But after they left, an hour after they left, they all got calls on their radios to park their tractors, and they were done for the
Crikey.
day. And then they ended up coming back. They said, well, do we come back tomorrow? And I guess they were told yes, and everybody came back tomorrow and were turned away at the gate.
Wow. Well,
and that was Thursday.
So now we fast forward to yesterday, which was Tesla's Q2 earnings report. And Tesla basically said, yep, this is a site that we are developing. We broke ground in Reno, Nevada. They didn't confirm the report so much as just went, yep, we've broken ground at a site in Reno, Nevada. So it's kind of, we think that's the one there, don't we? And it's as good as confirmed. And also that Tesla was very careful to point out that it's not the only site that Tesla's going to be working on. It's going to be one of many sites that Tesla's working on, multiple sites. And Tesla did kind of give this impression of, look, okay, hands up, it's us. We're responsible for this site, but we may end up developing other sites as well, which is a really important thing to remember. And it's a really important thing to remember from a news angle, but also from a local angle, and this is really where I want to just take this story before we move on to the rest of the news stories, Bob, is Panasonic's confirmed as a partner now, which also happened this week, which is no big surprise. Half of the facility is going to be used for manufacturing lithium-ion cells. The other half is going to be used for turning those cells into battery packs. So Panasonic is going to have half of the factory, and then other Tesla suppliers are going to have the rest of the factory. But what kind of impact does this have on Reno's economic future? Because at the moment, it's in limbo land, isn't it? I mean, you can't. Yeah. I mean, if you were somebody who was, thinking of maybe moving, let's face it, financially, the parts of the US are still not great, and if I was someone who was enterprising, I might look at this and go, hey, I'm going to move to Reno, Nevada, and I'm going to open up, I don't know, a dry cleaners, a coffee shop, whatever, to try and help cash in on the gold mine that is the Gigafactory. But you can't do that until you know for sure that site's going to be the Gigafactory, by which point those who've got the money to throw away, even if it's not going to happen, can grab the land first or move in first. So What's going to happen, Bob, in your area? Are you now in limbo land, Nevada? Well,
yeah. And I'm probably going to start ramping up a campaign to approach Governor Sandoval about this, because this is clearly going to be his legacy. He's either going to be the governor that lost the Gigafactory or the governor that won the Gigafactory. And right now, as it stands, there's a lot of rumors of why they shut the site down, ranging from, well, I don't want to get libelous, but I think I just made enough suggestion that it probably put things in people's heads, to the government and bureaucrats, not, negotiations failing and so forth. But of course, I think it's pretty clear Elon's just expertly playing all these different governments. But yeah, the Gigafactory is such an amazingly big deal that so many people don't understand. Of course, as you mentioned, you and I co-founded This Week in Energy, and we ran it for about a year, and then we brought it back. Went dark for a few months, and then we brought it back for 6 months, and our schedules just weren't working out. And then I brought it back and ran it for another year with Kirsten Hosberg in Berlin. And we, would survey, as we did before with you, and plus with Kirsten, we'd survey the world of energy with energy experts around the world, from South Africa to Singapore to China to Australia, UK, and the U.S., and all around, even India. So, I have a good sense of the importance of energy storage technologies going forward. And there's nothing more important right now in the high-tech world than the ability to store energy. So the Tesla Gigafactory is about a lot more in the long term than just traction packs for EVs. Oh yeah, definitely. And it's huge. And if they land here, we've got Apple iCloud data center out there, eBay's out there with some sort of a facility. I have not a clue what it is, probably some kind of data thing. Yeah. Dell Computers out there with a small manufacturing setup. And there's other high-tech firms out there, and I got to give it to that Lance Gilliam guy who set that place up, that, yeah, he's done an expert job at bringing, finding a nice remote area that's, you're not going to have all the hassle of NIMBYs. That is true. You. That is true. There's some people that don't, oh God, you're digging up the desert and that kind of stuff, but it was kind of, between two cities. But anyway, so, and there's bringing in some really big companies, but mostly, for the most part, it's kind of warehousing and data centers, which don't really have a lot of employees. And of course, Gigafactory, we're talking 6,500 employees, they say. And of course, in the long term, this will also, because it's just such a huge raw materials to finished product type of a firm, high-tech firm with the latest cutting edge technology. I mean, that, like I say, nothing's going to be more important in our world going forward than energy storage, really, because that's going to enable just everything for distributed solar and wind and intermittent renewable energies, and all of our devices and things as they, because I'm sure it's going to become a great R&D facility. So that shines a big laser beam on Northern Nevada that, wow, this is like going to be the new high-tech hub in the United States. And, we're talking, the Gigafactory is peanuts compared to what it could potentially bring to our area. Yeah, it is true. And it's huge. I mean, it's unbelievably huge. So do you think that this is going to be part of a future political campaign for the next governor? Sadly, there's really no competition for governor right now, because Sandoval is so shoehorned in, or considered such a popular governor. So even if he lost the Gigafactory, I don't know whether or not it's on the public's radar, just how important this is. It's just like, oh, it's another big factory out there. And of course, what scares me is I've had bills in the state legislature, and I've dealt with our economic development folks, and I've tried to even get EV type related stuff adopted here, rebates and things of this sort, infrastructure, some charging infrastructure tax, rebate, things for putting in chargers and multifamily dwelling building codes and things to have them prepped for charging infrastructure. And everybody just kind of looked at me like, electric cars.
What are you talking about?
Plug in my car. This is like Nevada. We ride horses here. We still ride horses here, right? And it's really bad. I mean, the economic development. I had one just come to me from one of the big economic development places the other day, and he's like, what about these electrical cars? What those electrical engines and stuff, and they don't even have the vernacular down. They can't even talk about them.
Oh wow!
And I was thinking, God, if Tesla called that guy up and talked to him, they would, they'd probably run for the hills screaming.
That is true.
That really scared me initially, but apparently we were able to get through that potential roadblock.
Okay. Well, I'm just gonna carry on. I'm gonna apologize to everyone. Your video is stuck on you for now, Bob. I don't know why, and I'm desperately trying to fix it. So you're gonna have Bob
Nevada.
100% of the time.
I gotta answer a question. Is Nevada scarce on water? Yes, it is. Of course, the whole West is scarce on water. I do have a geophysicist who's in our professor up at UNR. Who's in our Electric Auto Association. I also co-chair the Electric Auto Association in Northern Nevada here, and he's a Model S owner.
Right. And
I asked him this question specifically about lithium mining, because in the article I mentioned lithium mining, and it's a brine that they pump up from underneath the desert. It's in central Nevada, here in Las Vegas, and they pump it up from underneath, and then they let it dry out on the surface of a dry lake bed, and then they scoop all that up and run it through other processes to get the lithium carbonate out. And apparently it is not very water intensive, almost not water intensive at all, because they can use just it's the way they do it. And then the factory itself, he says, he really doesn't know that much about battery. He's a geophysicist about battery manufacturing, but it's his sense that it's not that water intensive. Now, water for future growth, yes, big deal. We do have our water authority is pretty well ahead of the curve. And of course, we experience droughts every 10, 12 years anyway, so we kind of know how it is. We're in a major one now. But there's a lot of things we could do here locally to even save more water, because we went through that big period of economic growth, and we got away from doing the xeriscape, and everybody started doing, they started doing these cookie cutter type houses, they call them, and these big developments, and they'd slap a lawn in the front yard and put a tree in the center, right? Instead of, putting rocks and using desert plants and things of this sort, so we could save lots of water that way. Wow.
And at least you're not watering them like they do in Israel, though. You haven't got cables hidden under the ground.
Well, we got water pipes, but we're not doing desalinization, which is, of course, hugely energy intensive. And I understand they do that in some places like Saudi Arabia and stuff.
Right.
But no, I mean, we're pretty good with water, and then, of course, we have a huge empty building stock right now because so many people vacated the area during the Great Recession.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, where are you going to get all these people from?
We have a lot of empty houses, tons of them.
Wow. All right. Well, let's move on to the next story. All right. We kind of talked about Tesla Q2 and its earnings. It's up for those who are interested by 11 cents. It's up to 11 cents per share, earnings per share, using the non-GAAP method versus the GAAP method. Now, Bob, can you explain that for people?
Well, it means I read about it. I had to look it up. Let's put it that way. And I read about it. And accounting's like statistics. You can manipulate it to make it say just about anything. But it seems like the GAAP method. One is the general accounting principles method or something like that, and then the other excludes certain expenses and things that relevant.
Yeah, exactly. So the gap essentially is, this is the money I have in my bank. This is the money I need. This is where it all comes from. The rest of it, the non-gap is, and also we've sold these cars to people And those cars are going to be still worth this much money when the end of their lease agreement comes up in X number of years' time or months or wherever. So that's why the non-gap makes a profit where the gap doesn't. All right. Over in California, the DMV has handed out an astonishing 4,903 green HOV lane decals to plug-in hybrids and range-extended cars during the first 3 months of July. The first 3 months, the first 3 weeks of July. There's a typo there. I know who to blame. That's almost a third of the total number of stickers that Californian Senate Bill 853 allowed for an extension to the green HOV lane sticker program. So how long before all of these stickers are gone, Bob? And do we think it's time that plug-in hybrids start getting a harder time? They're becoming a victim of their own success.
Well, I don't know. I'm looking for that story. That was from last week, right?
This week.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Huh. I remember reading about this somewhere, but I'm really not that familiar with it. I mean, it's obviously a great idea, offering these HOV type stickers and stuff to help encourage people get into more green transportation. But as far as all the intricacies and the policies of funding the program and how many are left, I don't know.
Well, I mean, there was originally 40,000, and then it became, then they extended it by 15,000 to give you 55,000. But now, of those 15,000 additional ones that were released on the 1st of July, already the DMV has issued 4,903. So it's not going to be that much longer before they all run out. I've heard lots of people this week saying what they would be in favour of is changing the regulations of the green HOV lane stickers. So those are the ones that are limited in number. They're for plug-in hybrids and range-extended electric vehicles, like the Chevy Volt, the plug-in Prius, the Fusion plug-in hybrid, the Energy plug-in hybrid. I think I already said the BMW i3 Rex. Those are the cars that program is designed to help. And they will give you access, single occupant access to the HOV lanes, regardless of how many people are driving in the car at any one time. And so what you're left with is a situation where you have people who are buying cars like the plug-in Prius, who only buy it to go in the HOV lane. And they're claiming these stickers. And a lot of people are saying, well, what we should have now is we should have this situation where we can actually say to people who are applying for these, okay, now you have to have a range of, I don't know, pick a number, 30, 40 miles. And unless your car does 30 or 40 miles per charge, you can't use the HOV lanes. You can't have the program. What do you think to that?
Yeah, I probably would support doing it for any car with a plug, but then I guess we do have to take a look at how many people are actually buying these cars just because they can get the HOV lane sticker. And it's like you say, the plug-in Prius who's got, the 10-mile range or so. And it's like, are there enough people buying these cars that would encourage automakers to just start putting plugs on cars that have 2 or 3 miles of a whole electric range?
Exactly. That's the point.
So if that were the case, I mean, if that's, I would say maybe with, I don't know, 10 miles is pretty insignificant. I mean, as we know here in the U.S. at least, well, and also in Europe, I found out surprisingly doing my other show, is that 40 miles, or how many kilometers is that? About 55 kilometers or something like that, is, about 80% of us in Europe and the U.S. drive less than 40 miles per day. And so, that seems to be a really, really good number and a strong number, and makes a strong case for that should probably be the cutoff line. But and then of course, how crowded are the HOV lanes getting? I mean, I was born and raised in LA in the 1960s, and I remember when these HOV lanes first came into existence. I think it was in the early 70s. And of course, people would get little blow up dummies and put them in their cars and all kinds of stuff like that. But, I mean, this is obviously an extension, adding the plugins, and it doesn't matter how many occupants. Of course, then maybe you could give an HOV sticker for a plug-in Prius and make it, because it's under a certain range, all electric range, then they have to have an occupancy requirement. Of course, then the cops would have to know, oh, well, that one's got a range of this, and that one's got a range of that.
Well, maybe the option is just to change the regulations. This was incentivized initially to drive down air pollution in the state of California. It's working. Isn't it time to move it on to the next level? I mean, that's essentially what this is saying, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's time to move it on to the next stage. All right, moving on. This is a story from the previous week as well. The BMW i3 wasn't tax exempt in the state of New Jersey. Then it was tax exempt, and then it wasn't, and now it is again. What is going on in the state of New Jersey, and why is it taking the state such a long time to get to the bottom of this? It's maddening.
Yeah, I don't know. All I know, though, is that I'm not a big fan of tax credits in any case.
Go on.
whether it's renewable energies or cars, because they're inherently inequitable. There's a group of us out there, me, who has I've got a good savings that I live on, but I don't have like any income. So a tax credit doesn't do me any good at all. When you come to federal and state sort of income tax credits. But as far as the I3 in New Jersey with the sales tax credit, now that, of course, applies to everybody.
Yes, it does.
And that is, one way to encourage sales of EVs. But one thing I have problem is all the incentives that are directed at the public, the consumers, rather than at the dealers. And this doesn't mitigate the problem with the dealer problem, which is just absolutely gigantic, and encouraging the dealers to sell the vehicles. Because I suspect that dealers, even if we had no incentives for the public, that dealers, if they had a big incentive to sell the vehicles, then we would still be selling probably about the same amount of vehicles. I know a lot of people made their decision to buy an electric car because they got the $5,000 rebate or $3,000 rebate or a sales tax credit or whatever it might be. But there's, salesmen are salesmen. If there's an incentive for them to sell, they will sell the vehicles. I'm kind of supporting the idea, or would support an idea of where you kind of split these incentives between the consumer and the dealerships. Give the dealers some sort of tax credit off their corporate operations or something for selling these things, or property tax credit or something if they sell a certain quota of plug-in electric vehicles. Those are the sort of programs I would be interested in seeing, because we need to overcome the dealer problem. There's just way too many dealers here in Northern Nevada. I could say without a doubt, every single one of the dealers here hates electric cars, and they don't sell them. There's one salesman at one of the dealerships, I won't mention any names, who is an enthusiast, and he's the only guy. They'll point people right into just, you don't want that Nissan. Oh, you don't want that Chevy Volt. You want this car. And we'll cut you a deal on this car.
And it happens here as well. And it's so frustrating when it does. It really is. All right. I think it's time for...
Let me say, I drove an i3 too.
An i3 too, as well?
No, an i3 as well.
Oh, great. What did you think?
They're just awesome.
You liked it. You're on the liking.
It's like a little weird style-wise, but I guess that's what new cars are like anyway. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, as far as they so nailed that single pedal driving, the regenerative
braking,
it's just, I was so impressed.
That is very true. However, I would also say that it got me. It frustrated me for a while. And I'm not entirely sure why, but it frustrated me because I wasn't able to find the balance point in the middle, if that makes sense. So...
Yeah, I heard you talking about that, and kind of doesn't. I don't know. It just, you obviously have to drive a little differently, but I think maybe I already drove
in a particular
manner
way.
that, I'm always driving way ahead of myself. And if I see traffic slowing up or a signal getting ready to change way out there,
you're changing
backing off.
Yeah.
In this case, and maybe I do know what you mean, because it's kind of like you drop the throttle when you see stuff happening way up ahead, and you coast up to it.
But it
this
happens.
One stops.
Yeah, it immediately it hammers on those brakes immediately, and it does take just a little bit of time.
You just have to modulate. Modulate
absolutely. All right. Well, if I'm sounding and looking a little bit distracted, it's because I'm trying to fight things, studio, everything. But we are going to have a little ad break here. We will be right back. If you want to support
next, so
if you want to support the show, please do, because frankly, this is a one person show, and we do work very hard on trying to keep everybody happy. And at the moment, we're not doing very well. We'll come back with a Nissan Leaf battery pack. So stay right back. We'll be right back. We're back. Nissan Leaf. You can buy a Nissan Leaf battery pack for your Nissan Leaf, a replacement battery pack, for as little as $5,499. However, Nissan said last week, it's losing money on every single one. It also said that not a single customer has yet purchased a replacement battery pack under the scheme, which kind of... That kind of is a moot point then, isn't it, Bob?
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, the folks in Arizona, the ones that have been complaining about degradation of the storage of their traction packs, I guess it's not severe enough for them to go out and get the replacement for $5,500 yet. Right?
Yeah. But it also means that, I guess, that you are left in a situation where you know that things are going to get better. Things will get better with time, won't they?
Well, certainly.
I mean, eventually we're going to be in a position eventually where this is going to improve.
But I mean, it's nice that Nissan has come up with this program, because it does offer a certain reassurance that, because it's always the battery, that's the new thing. And it's like, well, I'm changing laptop batteries all the time and things of this sort, to help mitigate some fear of what happens when the battery loses its storage capacity. And so here's an option, and $5,499 after the $1,000 trade-in rebate. And does that mean that I could go down to the Nissan dealer right now and grab a battery for $6,000?
No, you have to have your car.
Yes, I know.
So that's a shame.
There'd be so many people down there right now.
I want to buy this battery now.
So they can rip it apart and put it in their own cars and stuff. I'm a conversion guy. But I mean, $5,500, if you start adding up gas over a year or a year and a half for an average driver, that's nothing.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Although people here in the United States don't like plunking down large chunks of change. They'd rather buy stuff on credit. Of course, I guess if you can buy it with your credit card, they were happy.
Yes. You'll be pleased to know I've just fixed the video switcher. Yay. So I can now switch in between myself and Bob easily. All right. Audi is launching a V6 plug-in hybrid diesel version of the A8 this year. At the same time, Porsche has just recently announced the Cayenne SE Hybrid. It's a plug-in hybrid. These are two high-performance cars from essentially the same company. They're both owned by Volkswagen. High-performance plug-in hybrids. Is this going to be the new wave of plug-in cars, Bob? So we had the first wave was the plug-in cars for the enthusiasts, the people who really wanted plug-in cars. Is the second wave going to be people who just want the power of a petrol car, and the only really reason why their car has a plug-in drivetrain is because the car manufacturers need it in order to satisfy CARB regulations?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really sad. Of course, we've already seen this going on with just the whole gas hybrid technology being added to more of these luxury sedans just to give them better performance. It isn't about economy, but it is about marketing, and it is about, hey, I got a hybrid, but it really performs, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
No, this is sad. That's not a good development.
Well,
start using plug-ins that way.
Well, I think we're at a point at the moment, Bob, where I don't begrudge people from having plug-in hybrids, because I think that plug-in hybrids can actually get people, as Chelsea Sexton, has said multiple times, they can get people into a car as long as it's got a plug.
Oh yeah,
that's the important thing. But also, there is that mindset of plug-in hybrids don't tend to have quite as sophisticated charging capabilities. The Outlander plug-in hybrid being the exception. So people tend to sit at charging stations longer because the cars don't have as a powerful onboard charger, and things just take longer. And
people sitting at charging stations, and we're talking about what percentage to actually do that. Most people charge at home, right?
True. But I mean, I've seen there's been certainly a spate in the UK of people moaning about plug-in hybrid drivers parking and charging, and people going, there's this, and there's this elitism, right, between all EV and partial EV drivers. So I've heard Volt drivers get absolutely criticised to kingdom come by Leaf owners, going, "Hey, you're charging in my space," which is not the way to behave, frankly. So we'll see. All right. This one's going to really get you angry. A few weeks ago, Toyota executives hinted that governments around the world would need to offer substantial incentives to encourage buyers to go for hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. Now, this week, we heard a rumour that the new Toyota fuel cell vehicle is going to be called the Toyota Mirai, which is Japanese for future. But last week, Japan said it was going to be offering 2 million yen to every single hydrogen fuel cell customer who bought a hydrogen fuel cell car. Now, 2 million yen, for those who don't know, is 20,000 US at current exchange rates per car. Do you want to talk about this for a second, Bob?
Well,
you can have a rant.
Anybody that's been in the EV space for a long time, they're very skeptical about hydrogen, and a lot of us really kind of loathe hydrogen. And of course, Elon Musk got asked about hydrogen, and what did he say yesterday, Nikki?
He said it was good for something. He said it was good for one thing, and I can't remember what it was. Very derogatory. Can you remember the exact phrase?
I missed that part, but he got into the efficiency.
He was really
in the energy return on energy invested, and the steam reformation of natural gas to acquire the hydrogen. And of course, you got to frack a lot of people were about 20-30% of natural gas is fracked these days, and
it's not good, is it? Not really.
Of course, electrolysis is like just totally a waste of effort. And then, of course, you got the water resources, fresh water resources. And no, you cannot use ocean water. It has to be fresh water, and so on and so forth. But yeah, hydrogen is just, it's such a red herring. And it just seems to be, I don't know, is it a mindset in the automotive industry that for some reason, I mean, how is a plug not like a gas pump? I don't know. I mean, it's like you got to be pumping a fluid or something to be actually operating a car.
Right.
Because I mean, they've got the same problem that you hear some people saying. I mean, some say it's not really a big deal, but others say it is a big deal, that the reason dealers hate electric vehicles is because, pure electric vehicles, BEVs, is because of the less maintenance, and that they earn all their money on the maintenance. And of course, this Toyota Mirai will be a very low maintenance car because it's essentially an EV, a BEV, with just simply a fuel cell in there and a hydrogen tank. So you've got that same problem there, yet I just don't get it. We know
it's the cost that blows me away. I mean, it's the expectation that the cost of these vehicles. I mean, people moan about the cost of subsidizing EVs, but the thing is, Toyota's done this before. Toyota has completely successfully underwrote the hybrid revolution.
Yeah, and that was a huge cost to them. But like you say, they did it themselves, right?
And it seems a similar story, actually, to last time. The hybrid car only came onto market from Japan because was it Bill Clinton? Or was it? I think it was Bill Clinton went, we're going to build we're going to build hybrid cars. We're going to pass regulations. We're going to mandate hybrid cars, or we're going to encourage hybrid cars. GM and Ford and everybody else was into hybrid cars, and then they kind of all went, nah, it's all right, you're good. By which point, Honda and Toyota had gone, oh, crikey, we better do something about this. And they came out with it. And I think they were not the first. I think America kind of looked at hydrogen long before Japan did. And now Japan's going, yeah, we want this, we want this, we want this.
We've been looking at, when I was in college, like the first time of about 5 times. When I first got out of high school and I was in college, that was a big thing. They were talking a lot about hydrogen. And I remember Toyota, my God, I think it was Toyota, brought a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle to our college. Wow.
There you go.
That's right. That would have been in the late 70s. And of course, they were all excited about it. I remember all these Asian guys, they were all just, they were just really buzzing around it. They thought it was so cool. Of course, I thought it was pretty cool too. But then, at the same time, in the late 70s, we had the gas crunch. You got to remember the gas crunch in 75, 76. And that caused everybody to start looking at alternatives. So we'd be talking about Jimmy Carter era then. And then of course electric cars came into being too, were starting to be talked about again. And Electric Auto Association was formed in the late 70s. So I don't know exactly, though, the whole history. I just looked it up on Wikipedia, and they don't have a history of the hybrid vehicle. So that's a good question.
Anyway.
I remember it. I remember seeing them come. God, when was the first Prius? Because that was the first hybrid vehicle, right?
2000 and... Well, no, hybrids will work.
It was so ugly.
No, it was 1997 when they started producing it, but I think it was 1994, I think, when it was unveiled. So it was the mid-90s. And obviously hybrid cars had been looked at long before then. Hybrid cars again, right back into the 70s. We've been here before. But
we've been doing. The thing is, though, we talked about the hybrids. They built the hybrids, and now we've got hybrids all over the place, right? And they've talked about plug-in hybrids. They built the plug-in hybrids, and now they're all over the place in all different kind of varieties. Many more coming. We've talked about the hydrogen, and they've built a prototype, and now we've got one coming to market, and it's like there's no infrastructure.
Well, we've also got the Hyundai as well, of course, in parts of California. Right. But it's a compliance car, isn't it? Anyway, let's move on. You've had enough of hydrogen. DC quick charging stations.
The fuel of the future, and it always will be. And what is it that one guy said on somebody I wrote down? Actually, it didn't go back to your former EV cast. It went clear back to the Aptera forums, apparently, where somebody wrote that I'd love an affordable, efficient hydrogen fuel cell vehicle. I could park it right next to my unicorn.
All right, DC quick charging stations are traditionally really big, especially the 50 kilowatt CHAdeMO ones that I use on my Leaf and other people do. But BMW this week, in collaboration with Bosch, unveiled a 24 kilowatt wall mounted DC quick charging station. Pretty cool, Bob.
Great.
I mean, it's wall mountable, which is brilliant because it means that you can, put it on the wall and it will work, and everything will be good and happy and dandy, which is exactly what we want it to be, really, isn't it?
But this is for commercial locations.
Yeah. Very cheap as well, like $6,800, I think, if I remember off the top of my head, which is affordable. But at 20 kilowatts, you could conceivably put one in your house. Yeah. Conceivably, if you had a big enough house.
Yeah, brought in a separate service and stuff.
Alrighty, all right.
But why? Why? You get home, you plug your car in, you wake up in the morning, you go about your business.
Range anxiety and charging anxiety, and it's the bigger, faster, stronger, harder thing, isn't it? It's not really true. All right, we're gonna have another quick ad break, and we'll be right back. And we're back. I don't even know if we had an ad. To be honest, YouTube's being fussy these days. Flow cell technology, Bob, could revolutionize the electric vehicle industry. This is what you get if you can combine the flexibility of a liquid fuel-based system with the practicality of an EV. It's really clever. How it works is the flow cell, there was a car that has been given approval last week in Germany to go and do public road testing. It's called the Quant E limousine. The guy behind it, or one of the guys behind it, is none other than Christian von Koenigsegg, the guy who obviously is responsible for the Koenigsegg sports car. Really, really big, powerful, well, not very big actually, very powerful sports car lusted after by Top Gear fans all over the world. He is a Tesla Model S owner, and the flow cell technology behind the Quant E is essentially like a battery pack that you can refill. So here's how it works. Instead of having your electrolytes within a rigid battery pack or cell that you would have in a normal situation, flow cells use two storage tanks where they store the electrolyte, which obviously has the free ions in it. It's then pumped past a special membrane, either side of a special membrane. And when it happens, when those two different fluids are passed over this special membrane, one each side, an electrochemical reaction takes place. It creates a potential difference, a voltage essentially, and current flows. And when your battery pack is empty, in other words, when the ions have gone from one tank to t'other, and you've taken power out of it, you can pull in at a specially designed service station, pump out the discharged electrolyte, which then goes off to be recharged, and you can fill it with fresh electrolyte. And you can do it in the same amount of time that it takes to fill a gas tank with gasoline. Also, of course, you can recharge it at home using the electrolyte in your tank. So you can just recharge it like a normal EV. It's just that the electrolyte lives in these special tanks rather than in the cells themselves. What do you make of this, Bob?
Oh, I read that story last week. I'm glad you gave me a summary to refresh my memory. But yeah, it's an impressive technology because you kind of have both of best worlds, so to speak, because you can still plug in at home and refuel at home, or when you're caught out, short on the road, you could just pull into an electrolyte station and refill or refresh your electrolyte. So,
I think it's brilliant.
I think it's a great idea. We'll just have to see how it scales, for commercial use.
Well,
that's always
I guess
the big question.
That is the big question, isn't it, really, at the end of the day? We'll have to see how it goes. But I think it's going to be good.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were going to say something there. I said I think it's going to be good. I think that the TÜV is very, very known for its adherence to strict safety standards. So it wouldn't have even let it on the road for testing if it thought there was a safety risk. And we see what happens there. It was a beautiful car as well. So it's definitely worth taking a look at the show notes with it in. All right. Insurance Institute of Highway Safety, IIHS, really, really top-notch safety organisation. They essentially do crash tests on cars for automakers, and you have to actually request that your car be tested by them, right? They don't just say, they're not like NHTSA where they go, you have to have your car tested and to prove it's safe. This is, if you want us to test your car, do it. And they offer, obviously, they've got this list of approved cars that are part of the IIHS Top Safety Award, which is like a top accolade to prove that your car is safe. Most automakers, if not all automakers, use IIHS tests alongside NHTSA tests to prove that their cars are safe. One car that hasn't been tested by the IIHS yet is the Tesla Model S. Tesla hasn't submitted it for testing.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Interesting. But the Nissan Leaf and the Chevy Volt were tested back in 2011 when they were both brand new cars on the market. They both got top safety pick awards. Part of the IIHS's safety remit, and I don't know why I'm having such trouble saying IIHS, is that these tests are changed. They improve year on year. They get stricter year on year. As car technology improves, as crash risks change, the tests used to prove these cars are safe or not changes. And about 2 years ago, the IIHS introduced something called the Small Offset Frontal Impact Test. Now, I'm going to describe it because it's a bit hard to understand. Essentially, you've got the front of your car, the whole front of your car, and instead of impacting the car dead on, which would be a head-on collision, or half of the car impacted, which would be an offset frontal impact. The small offset frontal impact is where you have just 25% of the bumper, essentially the bit where the wheel arch is behind, impacted at 40 miles an hour into a concrete block. Now, this test, based on the mechanics of the universe in which we live, is notoriously difficult to pass. It's difficult to pass, isn't it, Bob? Because of the fact that if you have a force acting over a greater area, the forces are spread out more evenly. If you have a force acting over a smaller area, the damage to that area, or the impact of the effect of the impact on that area is greater, isn't it?
It's concentrated. Yep.
Yeah,
and
concentrated.
And they do that like right behind the steering column area.
Right. Right. And the test is essentially, if you imagine that you're driving along the road, and it's a horrible thing to think about, but I've been thinking about it this week.
Oh, these photos are scary.
It's scary. If you just imagine.
You think 40 miles an hour is like nothing.
I know.
It's like, wow.
So imagine that you're driving down a country lane, 40 miles an hour, and there's a truck coming the other way, and you know, your iPhone goes off or whatever, and you just glance down for 2 seconds and you wander over the median. And that's the kind of crash I think that this accounts for. You just glancing blow to the other vehicle, or you're driving down a street and you...
No. I mean, you go over the median and you run into a car coming the other direction.
Yeah.
Multiply by 2.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Run into the tree. You go
run
off
into the tree or whatever, and you hit you hit the car coming the other way. But you don't hit it head on. You almost miss it. It's one of those, and it's one of those things that we do. You know, when we're driving, we see something coming and we try and miss it. Well, in this case, this is proving categorically that sometimes it might not be the best thing to do if you're going to slightly just not quite miss it, and you're just going to hit a little bit of your car, the front of the car on it. The Volt was tested, the Leaf was tested, a whole load of other cars were tested. At the bottom of the pack, the Mazda 5 did really badly. Really badly. Obviously, that's a gasoline car. Really, really badly. The Cooper Mini Countryman did really, really well in the test. That one got tops picks. The Volt came off really well. It got a good rating rather than it got an acceptable rather than a good rating. Good is the top rating. It goes good, acceptable, adequate, and poor. Those are the 4 classes, okay? So the Volt got an acceptable. Now, acceptable is an adequate. I can't remember which way around it is. It's GAAP. Anyway, it got the second one down. So which is yeah, this is going to protect you. You're going to be fairly safe. It's not outstanding, but it's pretty good. And because of that result, it was added to the rest of the Volt's IIHS safety ratings, and it ended up with a top safety pick plus award. The Nissan Leaf, on the other hand, despite acing all of the other crash tests and coming back from all of the other crash tests with a really, really, really good result, the Leaf really didn't handle this test very well. The intrusion into the driver's footwell was 14 inches. The intrusion into the top of the driver's, so kind of chest area upwards, was 16 inches. The steering wheel was pushed out. The steering column was pushed. The brake pedal was pushed. The parking brake was pushed right up. And the IHSS basically went, you would get leg injuries in this type of collision in this car. You may even get severe leg injuries. Which is just shocking, isn't it, Bob?
Yeah, I mean, these pictures are just really scary. But of course, that Leaf, the photo of the Leaf, it's like the whole front end is just like disappears. It's just pancaked. Whereas the Volt definitely still has some integrity in front, although it's interesting how the wheel totally dislocated and got like wrapped back around and by the driver's side door. But of course, this raises a question, and I'm sure there's statistics out there. I don't know if you have seen them, Nikki, but how many people actually look at crash tests, consider crash test results when they're looking for a car? I know, obviously, it's a sales point.
I would hope I do.
Among many other sales points. And yeah, and then probably based on who that person is. A single guy like me, it's like, I probably don't think about it nearly as much as if I had 3 kids I was, buckling into the car, right?
Right. And it's a good point. I mean, I my view on this has changed. That we have 2 motoring shows in the UK, really. There are others, but there are 2 that really stand out. One is Top Gear, of course, which is very, very famous for being stupid and doing stupid things with cars.
How could it be good then? Why do you watch
good
it or even mention
entertainment
it?
because it's a comedy show and you watch it and you go, I can't believe people are that stupid. But the one that really is good is Fifth Gear, and that's got my good friend Johnny Smith in it, and they do actually do proper consumer advice. Top Gear is not really a car show; it's stupid, but Fifth Gear is very good. And Fifth Gear, I'm going to make myself feel old now. About 5 years ago, did a comparison between a Volvo wagon from the 90s, basically. And Volvo has this massive reputation for being very, very safe, with a couple of year-old minivan from Renault, or a MPV as we call them over here. The Volvo fared worse because it was an older car, and despite being the safest car in its day, still didn't have what it took to go up against a modern-day production family car. And it just reminds you that cars are continually evolving, they're continually improving, they're continually getting better. And should we worry about this Nissan Leaf not doing well in this test? I don't think so. Because every time you get behind the wheel, you're playing a game of chance anyway. And, if the whole car was dangerous, I think that would be different. But the rest of the car is safe. And you would have to be very unlucky to be involved in a collision like that, in that situation in which you would be involved. And as a lot of people have said, at 40 miles an hour, regardless of where the impact comes from, you're probably going to sustain some pretty big injuries. Cars are heavy. How heavy is the Nissan Leaf? I can't remember.
Oh, God.
I want to say 2,500 at least.
Oh.
Sorry, 3,200. 32, did you say? £100?
I don't know. If you're going to look it up, why memorize it when you're going to look it up? It's the old
Bob's going to wait.
Einsteinian adage.
It's pretty heavy. It's heavier than most of its cars.
There we go.
Most of the cars on the market.
Wikipedia.
Now Bob's got the figures.
Coming. God, it's slow today. Curb weight. Yeah, 3,300 pounds.
3,300 pounds.
For the 11-12 models, the 13 model, they shaved like 50 pounds off. 3,300 is 3,291. The older model was 3,354.
Okay.
1,500 kilograms.
So from our Newtonian physics class, force equals mass times acceleration. Or in this case, deceleration. Right?
Yeah. Goes to the negative, right?
That is a very, very, very big impact. And the deceleration in an impact it's less than a second, isn't it, in most head-on collisions from 40 to 0.
And that's what's interesting. A lot of people back in the old days, want to feel really old. Back in the 60s and 70s, we thought that cars were safer if they were more solid, like bricks and things. And that's where actually NASCAR racing and USAC racing at the time, the Indy type racing, came in to find out that it was better to dissipate all that energy by having the parts break away, fly away, or, to break up and kind of shatter and things like that, because that would help diffuse the energy rather than just concentrating it if you just have this like really heavy solid thing that doesn't break, and that causes a big shock to the driver and all that kind of stuff. But yeah,
it's horrible. Let's put
it's a big science.
It's a big, and there are people who are far better qualified at it than I am, and someone is going to moan at me. Someone will moan at me. All right, on to the next story. Last week, the UK government approved a new project, which is designed to get its official fleet plugged in and working as EV-friendly fleets or plug-in fleets, okay? Now, That comes from news this week as well. That joins up with news this week that the UK has funded 10 million into self-driving car technology, and it's going to have 3 key cities that are working on self-driving cars. Now, obviously, the UK wants to foster industry and innovation by doing this self-driving car thing. But I don't think self-driving cars are going to take off in the UK. And I think we've got some very unique situations here that we don't have elsewhere.
Why?
Our roads are so narrow, they're so small, and Brits don't trust anything that's new. I mean, we're not like Silicon Valley. We don't jump on things.
You are sounding like an old person, Nikki.
Yeah, we don't jump on things. But I mean, I'd love a self-driving car because then I could actually get some sleep and get some work done.
Of course, I'm very skeptical of them too. It's like, well, I'm never going to see them in any quantity. Although I was thinking about this a little bit when I was reviewing this article this morning. It was like, well, gee, by the time I'm ready to lose my driver's license because I'm too old and infirm to be driving safely, maybe they will have self-driving cars. So, yeah, that's a good idea, maybe.
Well, I mean, I like the idea of self-driving cars in as much as I'm a geek, and I like gadgets, and I like playing with new tech.
God, that'd be so scary just sitting there. And
I mean, we have them at Heathrow Airport. We have them at Heathrow Airport. I think the cars that are going to be the dangerous ones are the ones that are actually cars, and there's a blurry line between where you take over and the car stops. Yeah. I think I'm going to feel more happy in a pod that drives me somewhere than I am sitting in the seat with my seatbelt on with a steering wheel in front of me going, okay, going to drive now. But I speak to people on a regular basis who have cruise control in their car and they don't trust it. My sister won't use cruise control
even in the city.
But we've got manuals over here, of course. So my sister won't use cruise control. Just won't do it. She wants to be in control of the car all the time. And that's the same reason we've got manuals. I mean, most people don't even like automatics yet. So
really?
Yeah, I mean, stick shifts are slowly going out of fashion. We've now got Tiptronic gearboxes.
Or they think that automatics are, consume more gas.
Yeah, I mean, this is still the thing from the 1980s, when we were talking about the very early big hulking 4-speed transmissions. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and people are now moving to automatics. But now stop-start's coming on, people are moving to automatics more as well. But we have stop-start cars over here that drive me up the wall, and this is a complete rat hole. Stop-start cars in the UK, you come to a stoplight, you put your foot on the brake, the car turns off.
Right. Okay.
But you have to, in order for that to happen, you have to put the car into, you have to put it into neutral. You have to just, you have to put the car into neutral. Because when you pull away, you need to be in first.
Mm-hmm.
So you come up to the lights, you put your foot on the brake, and you can actually stall the car that way. Mm-hmm. And then if you dip the clutch, the engine will start again. But then you have to change gear. And by the time you've done all of that, the traffic lights have changed, and people don't like it because it's just complicated. It's not a case of coming up to the lights, putting your foot on the brake, keeping it on the brake, engine cuts off, lifting your foot off the brake, the engine starts again. Some cars like the smart car do that, but many don't. So yeah, it's a tough one. But the one I really want to talk about is the UK government approving this 10 million, I think it's 10 million.
Funding
to fund
3 cities.
To fund 3 cities. I think our cities are too congested.
You mean Bristol?
Well, Bristol's congested. We've got some of the worst congestion. I'll give you a case in point. This is going to be another rant. We live on the northern outskirts of Bristol. We're not actually in Bristol. We're in the nearby county called South Gloucestershire.
Suburbs.
In the suburbs, and we can get normally at non-rush hour time from where we live to our veterinarians on the further round. It's basically on the north. We're on the north side. They're on the northeast side. About 6 mile trip, 6 maybe 7 miles. We can do that easily in under 10 minutes. Okay. The other day, it took me over an hour to cover that distance.
Woo. Bicycle.
Now I was in the vault, so I wasn't burning any gas, but it was horrible. And
it's crazy.
I think maybe autonomous cars, people say autonomous cars are going to reduce congestion, That's great, but that's in the future when everybody's driving an autonomous car. As soon as you include humans into the mix, things go crazy. So if everybody's driving autonomous cars, every street is autonomous. Every car knows where every other car is, and they can all make this hive mind decision about, you go this way, I'm going this way, and they will work and it will be wonderful. But it's the interim period that is so risky because it will put people off. Because people will go, oh, I tried one of those, they were rubbish. It's the same reason why electric cars haven't taken off in the UK. We've had the G-Wiz. We had the G-Wiz for 5 years. And people went, oh, God, they're horrible. They're naff. They're horrible. They're ugly. They don't look very nice. They don't go very fast. They've got a top speed of 35 miles an hour or 50 miles an hour or whatever it was. You see people on the inner ring road like this in London, on the North Circular, going, looking over the steering wheel because the steering wheel's down here somewhere. And people had in their head that mind of a G-Wiz. And so when the Leaf and all these other cars came out, it's taken to the point of the BMW and the Tesla for people to actually the Model S, to people to actually sit down and take notice. Before that, they were just like, whatever, it was G-Wiz. And I think this is going to be the same problem that self-driving cars face. If there's any negative images brought on by self-driving cars doing anything they shouldn't, breaking down, not working, losing connectivity, or having an accident, that is going to cause so much trouble. And as soon as you do it on open roads, it's going to be a bloodbath. And I mean, I don't know, for example, do you have in the UK, in the US, do you have the people who sit at, who come up to stoplights and they've purposely detached their brakes, or they've got they've set it so that their brakes only just come on as the brakes start to really bite. And then they sue you because you ran into the back of them.
Oh, wow.
People who essentially go around and create accidents.
You shouldn't be running into the back of anybody. You're supposed to keep control of your car at all times, even if some yo-yo does some weird antic in front of you. The thing that scares me the most is, of course, mobile technology. I can't even think of the last time I saw what I considered was a drunk driver, but it's almost daily. Actually, yesterday, I almost got hit twice because of people on trying to text, it looked like, or read their email or something. It was insane. That's the one that scares me the most. And of course, those like big giant screen 17-inch monitor and the console of a Model S, I don't know, I question that a lot.
Well, we'll see what happens. All right, and so the other part of this...
But also, we might just also mention that also Nevada is, I think, still the only state in the country here that
California. Isn't it now?
Oh, finally got this autonomous bill. Yeah, they did just recently.
Right. Yeah. And I think the other part of this is connected to the UK, and I shouldn't really push these two stories together, but there were two tiny ones. The UK government has set up this government fleet scheme where they want to turn all the major central government fleets into plug-in hybrids and whatnot.
That's a good idea.
The Model S is being considered as a car that can be legitimately purchased by the government for use on government business. Now, here's the question. Is this a conflict of interest? Because Mr. Elon Musk also happens to be the UK government's official transport advisor in the matters of electric vehicles. Is that a little bit
if
naughty?
He wasn't involved in the decision, if there was like an independent group that made the decision, I think that would mitigate that problem. But,
Yeah, we'll see what happens. All right.
When is this policy supposed to begin?
Okay, so the autonomous is next year. And
no, I mean
the fleets are from now onwards. So
so they've actually officially said
they're looking. They haven't finished the list, but they've earmarked the money, if that makes sense.
Oh.
So, all right, and we're going to do and finally, you don't have a TV, Bob.
Well, my mom does, but anyway, go ahead.
You don't have.
I don't watch one.
Have you ever watched The Simpsons?
I've seen parts of shows years ago when I had a lady friend who had a young boy, teenager.
So, yeah. Okay, so if you're a Gen Xer and you're like me and you grew up with The Simpsons, I mean, Bart or Lisa are probably supposed to be my age, because they would have been when they launched. In fact, 26 years ago, so it's the 26th season this year. And I'm 34. 5 in November. So Bart's age, or Lisa's age. I was right in the middle. I was 9 when they started. The whole seasons, I mean, they've got crazier over the years. They've had electric vehicles on before. They had Homer drove something called the Electorus and drove it underwater and said, it's okay, it's electric, you can drive it underwater. And of course, it then got destroyed by the salt water. They've also, poked like fun at electric cars before. Ed Begley Jr. drove a brain-powered electric car in an episode. But in season 26, which is coming this fall, Mr. Elon Musk will star in an episode called The Musk Who Fell to Earth.
I heard about this.
Yes. In which he is going to basically lock horns with C. Montgomery Burns, the evil nuclear power plant owner, and strip him of his fortune. So it's going to be interesting. You know that Tesla's made it big and Musk has made it big when he gets to star on The Simpsons. He has been referenced in the past, but this is the first time he's actually been on. And he's no stranger. He's got a really interesting list of films that he's been in. He'll do the voice. He's going to do the voiceover. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. He's not a very...
So he joins a very...
I mean, he's a articulate man, but I don't know. It's like I was listening to that earnings call yesterday. He's not a real fluid talker,
No, he'll be following a script, so it'll be fine.
We'll see.
So that really is it for today. Thanks very much for joining me today, Bob, and thank you to everyone at home. Sorry there were some technical challenges. Unfortunately, that is what it is.
Sorry, I didn't answer the phone.
Oh, that's okay. I rang you 5 times.
Blame it on Skype.
Blame it on Skype.
Well, I got numbers. It was coming up 1, 2, 3, a little later, 4.
You have to go back and watch the start of the show when I was watching, when I'm going, I was having fears that something had happened to your mother and you were having to go and help her, and I was like, oh my goodness, something's happened. But all good. Right. Okay. Well, thanks very much for joining us. We won't be back next week. We are going to have a sabbatical for this show. Transport Evolved is going to carry on. We are going to be doing our articles every day. TEN will carry on. We'll be doing the TEN show every Friday, but without going into great depths. I'm currently doing Transport Evolved, the main show, on my own, and I'm not going to be at home much over the coming weeks. One of my family members is very ill. Another family member has got to go into hospital a lot as well, so I'm doing hospital runs all around the UK. There might be a special edition popping up because I've got a couple of cars coming over the summer, but I'm afraid I can't do this show if I'm not in Bristol. So no Transport Evolved, the original show, for a couple of weeks. TEN is different because I can take TEN and do it with me wherever I am. I take this nice laptop with me and the hard drive and the cameras and everything, but I can't take the rest of this studio. I hope you'll understand. If you want to criticise me for it, go ahead, be my guest. I won't mind. Thanks very much, folks, and as always, don't forget to plug in. See ya. Bye.